How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dyson Sphere Program. Hope you guys have been enjoying the series so far. If you guys have, you guys know what to do. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Consider subscribing because it does help out the channel and it helps get our videos out to more people. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns for me, or honestly, any tips and tricks, those are also very useful. Leave those down below. Other than that, let's get into today's episode. So, in the last episode, we kind of organized our inventory. Well, not just our inventory, but we also tried to organize a bit of the base's inventory. So we're just pretty much going to be doing a little bit more of that, at least for the first couple minutes, just while we make some room for things, but also while we continue crafting the conveyor belts and the sorters. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the name sorter. I like inserter, so I will probably call them that more often than not. Just because that's what I'm used to from Factorio. I'm sure you guys have heard me say that a million times as well, but hey. Anyway, so really, we're continuing on trying to get science to progress, because we do want to get the additional exploration, just so that way we can see different planets and planet types that we don't really have access to yet. I know I'm wanting to try to get to a sulfuric water planet, or a sulfuric ocean world, I believe is what people said it was. I don't know if it's that or if it's. I remember something about magma volcano things. I am being very bubble brain right now with what it was, but I do remember our goal was to get to that, right? So we just pump the sulfuric acid, and then we ship it back. However, I do have the hard setup of basically turning oil, water, and rock into sulfuric acid setup, but that shouldn't be too bad. And then I do also have to go ahead and connect up some of these other components, and I have realized that the reason some of those stations, although are set to local supply, local demand, or local supply, and then the other supply as well, like global supply, is I'm pretty sure there's just either not enough demand in the system, or because whatever's receiving it doesn't have drones. Because I know some of these components are used locally, but aren't, or rather can't be moved because the receiving end doesn't have drones, at least in whatever the link is. Because from what I've realized, thanks to your guys' comments and a little bit of my own research, along with what I've kind of experienced so far, is the system between point A and point B just needs to have the drones or the logistics transports in the system. And then from there, the system basically sorts itself out. And I found that it's more useful to ship from the hub, or rather the demand side, to have your bots in, because then you can get more outgoing ships versus sending it from the supply side, because then you're limited. At least from what I've noticed. I don't know if it's 100% the case, because like I've noticed some of the cargo ships doing one thing, but then I've also seen them do other things. I don't know, the system works. We're just gonna leave it at that. Here you can see me just going through, making sure we get more belts made up, because again, those are things we've run out time and time again, and I'm getting more of the inserters put together, and really just keeping the philosophy of using our internal replicator and keeping that thing queued up constantly. Mainly just because there's no real reason not to have it constantly crafting. Now, yes, it does drain power, and if you are earlier on, before you get more of the research to be able to sustain that additional power draw, then it's probably not as advisable to have that constant crafting draining your internal power source, especially if you find yourself having to also place down a lot of those things you're crafting. Similar to what I'm doing and have done, because I have run out of power before, and I have noticed that a few times, especially with the larger builds over in the oil area. where I run out of power and then the drones stop and then the crafting basically grinds to a halt and then it's a whole debacle. But it's something to just take note of. I like keeping constant crafting basically operating. Here you notice I originally was going to try to put each thing into the storage on its own belt, but then I was looking over my spreadsheet and realized these things aren't even going to produce a full belt. Well, they produce 2 full belts, which, because the build is cut up into such modularization, the build's cut up into modules, and so then we get 2 full belts. Well, 1 full belt and then 1 kind of full belt on the other side, because it didn't work out to 2 full belts. I think it was like 1.8 or something, or 1.9. And then I realized, oh, we're going to need a logistics station. And where am I going to put it? Oh, there happens to be one right here. So it worked out for us. There you saw me hit escape accidentally. The amount of times I hit escape in these games, because I'm so used to just a window or a terminal being open and then having to hit escape to, minimize it or close it, is frequent. And then what I also noticed what I can do on these builds is I can actually just loop the high purity silicon and the copper on those lanes, because I only need 2 lanes of copper, but I need 4 lanes of the high purity silicon. I think it was like 3.8, 3.9. So I always just round it up to make sure I have enough. And although I could have used compression here, and I do utilize it in some spaces, but I don't utilize it in others, honestly, it's just personal choice. If there is a reason to use compression, like compressed belts, over just having more belts, let me know. Like, if it saves on UPS or something, one way or the other, definitely leave that down below. I obviously, it saves space to a degree, especially if you're hemmed in with a very large build, kind of like you saw over in the sulfuric acid area, where I've done a lot of belt compression with the water and the stone. It doesn't make sense for me to do a bunch of individual belts. I could, but it would take up a lot more space. So I see that side of it. But yeah, definitely if there is a reason to compress belts over not compressing them, or if it's just purely a preference, because I've just kind of been going off the idea that, oh, it's just preference, and that's really how I've been building and designing this. But yeah, definitely let me know what your guys' thoughts on that are, because I know in Factorio, bots are or at one point were the end game way of doing things, because they did and still do to a degree save on UPS and FPS. It's not so much any a clear-cut decision anymore, although some people still use them and prefer them. The game has improved in such a way that you're no longer limited to one facet of the end game, which is something I like when developers do that. They kind of take in mind their other systems, and they allow players to basically use things in the end game that they didn't previously really have access to because of performance, and I'm glad that they fixed that. Anyway, so here we're basically going through. We're going to connect up all our builds, because I know we didn't really connect some of these up last episode, and so I'm really just making sure that we can plug these things in, because we do need these for a couple core components. We do have to start laying out other parts of the factory, but I did notice power kind of crapped the bed, and it has been hamstrung, because we tore up most of the factory 2 or 3 episodes ago at this point. And so it's making sure that we keep power going, because although, yes, we do have the Dyson Sphere, I haven't really set up the ray receivers for energy. I still have to work a couple of those things out. I haven't really figured out that part of getting the energy from the Dyson Sphere to our planet. I know you're supposed to use the ray receiver, I'm pretty sure. But as for how many and or the placement of them, I'm not really sure about. Like, does it make more sense to put the ray receiver on this planet, or would it make more sense to put it on a planet that's really close to the Dyson Sphere and then ship batteries back and forth and do it that way? I'm not really sure about that power transfer. Definitely let me know about that as well. Doesn't make more sense to ship batteries from a closer world with ray receivers with uninterrupted view, basically, or can I just put ray receivers on this planet and be fine? I'll have to experiment with that off camera some, and then probably do some of that next episode. Anyway, so we connected up what we could for the reactor, or the fuel rods. Now, we don't have the other component, and that was the titanium alloy, the titanium steel. I believe it's the titanium alloy. We don't have that, and so the reason we didn't have that was because we didn't have the oil, which we stopped working on because we needed to work on something else. This part of the game, kind of this refactorizing everything, really reminds me heavily of just having to constantly tear things down and rebuild it back up, right? But in doing so, you do one thing, but that leads to another thing, that leads to another thing, that leads to another thing. And so here I'm just checking and like going, oh, yeah, we didn't get this online, or, you know, because we need to double how many oil refineries we have. But then I was also remembering and reading my notes for this. I have to have compression because those belts are not capable of handling that much stuff if they were all active. So I do have to go through and kind of change that. But before we even do that, I have to tear up a lot of this kind of intersection of kind of our chemical area, because kind of the old build to our right, that takes oil and makes the fuel, and we're not really using that right now. I do have to plug it all back in because I do need to still get the hydrogen out of it, and I do need to get some of the fuel out of it to kind of kickstart the other system, but the other system should be self-sufficient after a certain point. So I no longer really need that build, so I could probably tear it up. I didn't really decide what I wanted to do with it just yet because I was kind of on a 50-50. Part of me wanted to keep it for nostalgia, part of me wanted to keep it because I think I had a reason for keeping it, but I couldn't remember, and I didn't have it written down as that was something I was keeping. So I'm pretty sure we're going to demo it at some point. I just don't know when. And really the hard part is some of these systems I wanted to keep up for now, but I suppose I could tear a lot of it up. I wouldn't have anywhere to put it, especially all that fuel, because there's 10,000 in one of those storage units, and well, we have a lot. But I was like, you know what? We might not have the production to replace the fuel oil, but we have enough to at least get the steel, or the titanium alloy made, right? So that way we can get fuel rods made again, and some other just core components of the factory that we just need. So here I'm putting down basically a belt monitor, so that way I can see, okay, how much am I actually putting on a single belt? And here's where I was thinking, how many belts am I going to need? And then I realized, oh crap, I'm going to need like 5 belts. I don't really want to do that, so let's do compressed belts, and let's loop it through. And I'm like, okay, how much can I put on a single belt? And the math works out, because it's 30 items a second, 60 seconds, so that turned into 1,800 items per second per belt. And I was like, okay, so then if we double compress it, that turns into 3,600. And I'm like, okay, that's still not enough, because I think the math was I needed 8,055 units per second. Or per minute? Per minute. Oh god. Could you imagine if it was actually 8,055 units per second? That would be insane. So I was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and plan this out. I took, without having to really move anything, I was like, okay, let's connect something here, and something here. Now, this isn't a permanent setup. Of this storage area right here, right next to our science, will probably move. I just wanted to get something to work and something that I could plug into, but as previously mentioned, things that work, that aren't in the way, are probably gonna stay there forever. Unfortunately, even if it doesn't look great, it will probably stay there. And so I'm like, okay, well, We were able to get up to 5,400. Well, we still need an additional like 3,000. So I'm like, okay, how can I compress this some more? And I'm like, well, we could triple compress it, because right now we're only double compressing and filling in the gaps. So I'm like, okay. And then I realized, oh, well, the belt filled up. And unfortunately, when the belt fills up, I can't actively read how much the belt is transporting. So I have to go through. And so here off camera, I was working on a couple calculations, and I was like, okay, how many more of these am I going to have to plug in? Then I was looking on this side, and I was like, okay, how could I plug more in? And then I realized this is an output. This isn't an input to the fuel oil. And I'm like, oh, I could remove this. Because the problem I hate is it's sometimes hard to see where the belt is heading, like if it's just a stagnant belt like that. And I mean, you can kind of see it, and I think you can hover over it a little bit, but it was just a bit of an annoyance. And I guess I suppose I could use whatchamacallit to look at that, but I was just like, you know what, let's zoom way in and look at it and see where the little arrows are moving. I'm sure I'm not the only one who does that. I'm sure there's an easier way of looking at it, but that was just the way that I did when my brain was doing it. Anyway, so here I am going through and just really connecting up the loop and making sure we can flip it. That flip, the like whole belt line is incredible. Like, or the whole path, flip whole path is life-saving. I really wish Factorio had that. That would make building all sorts of factory components so much nicer and like just quicker, easier. It really streamlines base building. And so here I'm just going through and realizing, okay, how can I connect this up? How can I kind of keep it looking half decent? And then here I realized, oh, we didn't have these things set properly. And then I was like, huh, why isn't it getting anything? Well, let me take half these drones, put them in here, and plug them in there. And because we have all that stone we mine locally, there's no point in sending it off-world if we need it here. So, I don't know if it's actually connected, the stone storage we mined up last episode. Actually, it might have been the episode before. But anyway, so then I was looking, I was like, okay, so we're able to get 7,200 units per minute. We need a little bit more. And then I was looking and I was like, oh, is there any research we can do? And unfortunately, we had all the research that we have access to really at this point, with the exception of a handful of researches. But a lot of those researches we can't get because science is turned off. So it was kind of one of those catch-22s, right? There's a lot of this we are doing just to get science back up and running and then be able to actually start launching those rockets again. So that way we can finish off our Dyson Sphere, finish off science, and go ahead and move on to our next series. Speaking of our next series, there are a couple front runners for what our next series is going to be. So Alpha 21 for 7 Days to Die just came out. So that is one series I'm planning on doing with my friends. I'm not sure when that series will show up here on YouTube, but we are going to start playing it this weekend. So the week that this comes out, we're playing that Saturday, or that Friday. So for those of you who watch this as soon as it comes out, so tomorrow, it will be this Friday that we're going to start recording it. As for when it shows up on YouTube, I'm not sure. It will either take the Tuesday, Thursday slots of the week, and so we'll probably start seeing that show up a little bit more. Diablo is another series we're currently doing. That is going to probably take over this slot for Dyson Sphere Program. Minecraft is still ongoing. We probably have a couple more weeks of that. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to replace Minecraft with another Minecraft series, or if I'm going to take a little bit of a break from Minecraft and do RimWorld, or actually do another RimWorld series and complete it. The reason the first campaign I didn't finish was because I started it at kind of a bad time because I was busy with some other stuff, and it just, for one reason after another, just got put on the back burner, and eventually just got taken off the stove entirely. And it really just got neglected to the point where I didn't really want to go back to it after so long, because I wasn't really sure what I was doing and kind of where I was going with things, because a lot changed between a couple episodes, because I streamed for a little bit on that world, and then we did a bunch of things. So needless to say, that campaign basically died abruptly. But yeah, So RimWorld and 7 Days to Die will probably be 2 new series we do that will replace Dyson Sphere Program and Minecraft. As for other series beyond those two, I'm open to suggestions for games. So if there's a particular game you guys want to see me play, I do have a kind of a roster of games that I am considering as well. They're not really as set in stone as RimWorld and 7 Days to Die right now. Like Satisfactory is a game I would love to do a series on, but I currently don't have any plans to do a series for. More of the Let's Try series. So in case you guys haven't seen that series, right now there's only one episode at the time of recording this. There's only one episode out for that. That's more of a any game, yeah, like I said, any game, even if it's a game that doesn't really turn into a good series or doesn't make a good series, I look at different games, I play it for like 30 or 40 minutes. If it's with friends or if it's multiplayer, I'll play it with friends if I can get them to get it as well, or if they already have it. And I just play it out, experience it, have some interesting gameplay, interesting commentary. Usually it's in-game commentary, so it's not like me doing this where I'm recording it after the fact, or even like Minecraft where I'm recording it at the time as well. It's more of I'm playing it, and so it's more of a genuine reaction. Anyway, kind of get back to our Dyson Sphere game here. I'm going ahead and connecting up all the remaining high purity silicon, so that way we can go ahead and get that production going up fully. And also one of the main reasons I headed over here was just so that way we could also get the titanium alloy going, because really that was our big goal for today, was to get that functioning, so that way we could begin to really start to see more of the factory come online and begin to do things. But yeah, any recommendations for future series, leave those down below, and I will take a look at those games. If I already own the game, then there's a higher likelihood that a series will be made out of it. However, if it's a game that I don't currently own or have any interest in, it might be more of a long shot, but I will at least look at it and give a response as to my consideration of it. So any idea, even if it is a kind of a far-flung idea, if it's a game you guys are interested in, I will consider it, even if it's only just one person who's interested in it, because to me that's worth doing. As kind of naive as that sounds, my goal is at least if one person enjoys what I play and enjoys how I play it, that's enough for me. But yeah, so cleaning some things up. As you can see, some of the miners have finished since our original establish of those mining outposts. Here I didn't have to take down the logistics station just yet because it still has titanium ore in it. And really I'm just going through and connecting up our output as well, because as you can see, those belts are very barren, but that's part and due because each column doesn't produce enough to fill a full belt. However, we do consume or will consume this much high purity silicon, because again, all this has been ratioed out to accommodate the amount of science I plan on having and the amount of rockets I plan on having. So we will just kind of have to go through and see where we can try to improve things. I might end up deciding to combine some of these belts just so that way there's not as many belts, or at the very least combine it so that way each of them just feeds into the subsequent belt, and so then there's less belts going into each logistics station. I don't know, I'm not sure about the efficiency of things. Like if it does save on UPS and FPS considerably, then I'll do it. But otherwise, if it's like a minute 10 or 20%, or well, okay, if it's 10 or 20%, that's enough for me to do it. But like if it's a percent of a percent of a percent, then I probably won't even consider getting rid of all those belts. I don't know. Here I'm realizing that our inputs are kind of screwed because we need 3 inputs instead of 1 belt. And so then I'm like, well, no matter what I do, there was no way I was going to fit those builds in there. So I'm like, okay, let me just move them over. Yes, there will be a gap in the furnace chains, but hey, it's worth it. it gets the build to work. I suppose I could put something else there. I could have moved everything over, but I didn't really want to tear the other builds down, because I then had to also move a bunch of inventory. Moving inventory is such a pain in this game, especially when you have 5 storage units tall on both sides, both input output, that I have to move. I just was like, I'm not gonna do that. That is absurd. But anyway, so here I was like, okay, let's set up demand, and as you can see, resources were flooding in already. And then here was one instance where I had to connect up compression. So I needed 1 belt of the titanium, 1 belt of the steel, and then I needed 2 belts worth of the sulfuric acid. So if I had to add some compression, and then from what we learned earlier, I just went ahead and added that, and then went and just looped this basically all the way around, and that allows us to get our titanium alloy. I was going to try to route the belts between the furnaces and the storage here, and then part of me considered moving the storage just 1 unit, which would have been feasible, but I was like, I don't really want to mess that aesthetic up. So let me just move the power relays up a little bit, lay down some belt first, so that way I had a good gauge, and so I didn't have to move anything later. And then let me just route it over and around, and then just in a nice big loop. I, of course, had to move the power relays because I didn't realize how far I had to put them out. And you guys have probably been hearing a cat meowing in the background. Maybe not. He wants out. He usually wants in as I start recording, and then immediately wants out as I'm in the middle of a recording. He has great timing. Yeah. Anyway, so really we're just going through finishing this up, and thanks to my half mastery of blueprints, I'm able to put down all of the inserters without too much error in how they're placed, because I do try to think about, okay, well, if I place them like this, I can interlace them like that. In this case, we didn't really have any of that. However, I did find that when I tried rotating it and placing it, it just wouldn't take. I think part of that was because the output was slightly shifted, but I don't know, I was not a fan of it, so I was like, okay, whatever, we'll just place it on here, and then I can just copy and paste the pair. I don't need the pair for this column, but I could use it for the other column. Alright, well, I think my cat is telling me that it is time, so I think this is where we're going to call it. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you guys did, you guys know what to do. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Consider subscribing, as it really does help the channel, helps the channel grow. We did just hit 250 subscribers, which is a really big goal. So I guess our next goal is 500, which would be really cool to hit. Very grateful for all your guys' support, as it really does help me do this more. I figure I'm already playing the game, might as well share it with you guys, but it definitely helps encourage me to keep doing more and doing different series and just trying new things out. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, you guys already know what to do. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns for me, and if you guys have any suggestions for future series you guys want to see, or really just any things you want me to do, discuss, play, definitely leave that down in the comment section below, and we'll see where things go. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Peace out.